I'm going to record a little bit of this class so I can paste it into YouTube for this week. So Friday, we're finishing setting up server 3. We did a core only install. We did sconfig on Wednesday to set the computer name up. So that should be in that video for on Wednesday. And today we're redoing sconfig and setting everything up on the notepad that's on the screen. So you may want to pause your video now because I'm going to pause the recording and you complete all of the configuration stuff. I'll resume recording again. There's another video that shows how to go through and set up and join a contoso.com domain. They use different IP addressing and stuff, but you can see all of the steps. I think it's in week 3. It's part 2 of 2 videos setting up server 3. Okay, so I'm going to resume recording. So we finished all of this. Like I said, if you're trying to rewatch this on YouTube, you might have to go and watch some of the config setup. Where is that at? Let me see. Not that. Canvas. So to get caught up with server 3, if you're behind, use all of these settings here in Notepad, but I believe under week 3, it should be the setup video 2 of 2, or the server 3 setup. One of these 2 videos here will be completing instead the setup of server 3 and how to use sconfig and make all the configuration changes. So we've got server 3 configured in this class, and we've double checked to make sure that we see it in Active Directory users and computers. It shows up as a computer as server 3. I don't see it in my server manager. We can add it. I did think the only way was go to manage and add servers, but somebody in the afternoon class says you could right click all servers and there's an add server button. I've never seen that, didn't know that was there. That's why I normally ask students, hey, I'll figure out how to do it. Student showed me a new way. I knew right clicking and task and stuff, that didn't work, but I did know add, but yeah, right click add server over there. Find now and double click server 3 to add it in. And it'll add it into server manager so you can manage it. So pretty cool. However, if you right click server 3, we got several options that we could manage with this thing. We could bring a remote desktop connection straight up. That should probably work. We could also try to go to computer management. That probably is not going to work. We're running a patched version of 2016, but I bet computer management is still something that's not going to work when we click on it. Let's see. It takes a bit. It looks like it's still gonna fail because Windows has a firewall turned on, and it's blocking certain ports that Computer Manager tool needs to be able to access it. So it says I need to enable appropriate Windows firewall rules on the remote computer. Open the Windows firewall with advanced security snap-in and enable the following rules. I need a COM+ network. It needs to be allowed. All rules in the remote event log management. We can use group policy. We can use PowerShell. We can use a netsh command. So lots of different commands that we could use to manage the firewall. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So that is a problem. Our firewall is blocking access to certain tools. Other things, let me check remote desktop connection. Remote desktop appears to be working. It asks for a password. That's taking a bit. Could be because I was logged in. Nope, there we go. So remote desktop connection connected me in. Pretty cool. I can go and hit the X though. It just gives me a command line. There's no GUI. Like, ew, that's not the remote desktop. There's no desktop. It's a command prompt. But you can do that. sconfig doesn't work remotely. So if you had to run sconfig, you would have to remote desktop and run sconfig from the command prompt. I found that out just by trial and error, that I've tried to open up a remote command prompt and sconfig doesn't come across where you could use it. One of the remote command prompts is the Windows PowerShell. If you right click server 3 and open a Windows PowerShell, after a few moments, you should get a PowerShell prompt and you should have the information showing that you're on server 3 at the beginning of the prompt. So I could remotely type commands. This is where I tried to type sconfig and it just went haywire. So I'm not going to attempt it. Well, why not? Sconfig does some weird stuff and it drops me back to the command prompt. It doesn't actually stay and let me type in things like 14. It's already quit out. So that's where I would have to remote desktop and run sconfig through a remote desktop if I needed to. So yeah, that's I forgot exactly what it did. It just doesn't run. It displays to the screen and then quits. And you get some errors. Okay, well, we've come up to break time. Let me pause my recording. And what we're going to do, so looking at server 3, I'm going to log back into my server 1. And I'm just going to close the server 3 window down because we should be able to do most management of it remotely now that we've got it joined to the domain. So I'm just going to exit out. We've got all the basics done on sconfig. We can pretend like server 3 is maybe in another city somewhere that we have to manage it remotely. Okay, so server 1. So what I've done on server 1 is I've right-clicked, or I've added it to my server manager under all servers, and I've right-clicked on it, and I've opened up Windows PowerShell. So PowerShell comes up, and the components, what you should pay attention to is the server. That way you know that you're actually connected to a remote machine and you're not typing stuff on server 1, as it tells you in the prompt what server that you're typing the commands on. The other part, it shows you exactly what folder you're in. It looks like it dumped me into my documents folder, which doesn't really matter. I'm not going to do anything with the file system right now. It doesn't really matter what folder I'm in. But to make it easier to see commands I type on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and change to the root directory, and it's backwards from Linux. So change directory is still the same command, but the directory separators are backslashes in Windows instead of forward slashes. I used to make fun of Microsoft's backward thinking. There are backslashes everywhere. Linux forward thinking, but let me also see if I can increase the size of my font. So I can boost the size of the font, make it a little bit easier to see on a recording and also on the projector up here. I've got a magic if I can even zoom in on the projector. Something like that, make it a little bit bigger. And that zoomed in. Did 16 boot back up?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the login in as administrator?
Yeah.
And pass 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, server manager, go ahead and click on the changer to, well, I can't remotely see it. Yeah, bring up your Hyper-V manager. So PowerShell, commands in PowerShell always start with a verb, followed by a dash or minus sign, followed by a noun. So pretty much all the commandments and stuff, these are little mini programs that you can provide additional information to make them do something on a computer system. Well, they always start with a verb, a dash, and a noun. Click here. And open the Virtual Switch Manager. Some of the verbs that should come into play would be get. Get's a verb. You do a lot of get. You're getting information out of the computer system. Basically, so you can see if you need to change it or not, or what's available. Another really common verb is set. So you're going to set something. There's a lot of commandments that start with the 3 letters, GDT, dash, followed by some object or something that you're going to get information from. And then they normally have a corresponding set to that. Other verbs out there, like enable. And then you can enable something or disable something. A lot of cool stuff. We need to get stuff out of the our firewall. Now you go back to the server manager. Yeah, back to the server time is going to ASUB.edu. Ask for your username and password. Oh, your credentials. I don't do that. So you put the name, ASUB.edu. See with just your student account, if you can join it. You might have that right. So yes, we're going to use a get command. And you can hit tab and wait for a while and see if it puts something out there. It takes sometimes a little bit of time for it to load up. You can continue hitting tab, and I'll let you scroll through some of the commands that are available. You'll start to realize that there's a whole lot of them. There's a lot of stuff, right? A whole bunch of commands. So the nightmare is like, what command do I need to type in to view my firewall? So learning this stuff is not something you just pick up really, really fast. You practice over months and years playing with this stuff. If you've worked at command line before, Linux commands, Cisco, it may be a little bit faster to pick stuff up. What I'm going to do, I'm going to backspace this, and I'm going to get net firewall RU, and at this point I'm going to tab completed. I know it's get net firewall rule, but just in case I got a typo or something, I'm going to tab to complete the last couple of letters. That way it lets me know that I've not got a misspelling. It's not going to throw a red error on the screen. You may have done tab complete in Cisco. I use it for the spell checker, basically. If it doesn't tab complete, then I've got something misspelled wrong, or I'm trying to type in a command that doesn't exist. Now, sometimes tab complete takes a while. That first tab complete, it took 5-6 seconds before ACL popped on the screen. When you first start the things up, that intelligent autocomplete isn't loaded into RAM yet. It only does that the first time you try to tab complete something, and it takes sometimes a while. So get net firewall rule. If I just hit enter right here, it's going to dump a lot of stuff to the screen, probably. That's a lot of jump to the screen. And it continues to go, and go, and go. And you're reading all that, right? And catching everything? Yeah. And it's continuing to go. There's a lot of firewall rules that they've got designed and pre-built into the system to open up. You know, you've got some applications that run on both UDP and TCP ports. Some applications require multiple ports to run on, so those apps will have a rule for inbound, outbound, and plus if they got TCP and UDP, they'll have matching rules for that. And then if they got multiple port numbers to run for a particular app, they'll have, you know, one for each of the extra ports. That's a lot of stuff to look at. And I see as I scroll up, stuff starts duplicating. So that right there is a section for one firewall rule. And then I see name starts over again. So sort of that section, you can display name, description, display group, enable profile, platform, direction, all kind of weirdness. We can narrow that down, and we can make this look a whole lot better. The best, so I was talking about some some things have multiple ports that need to be open for them to work. Like some can accept UDP connections or TCP. So each one has a different name or different display name. See, this one's async in, and they'll probably have one for async out, and then they may have one for async out UDP and async in UDP or something like that. So there may be 4 different ones for this one program to work. I like to look at the display group because it will collapse it into one name, and you can turn stuff on or off on like all 4 of them at the same time. So I would like to look just at the display group. And the other thing I like to look at is it allowed through or is it blocked? False means it's blocking and not accessible. True means you're allowed through. So I really like to just look at 2 things instead of all the other stuff up there. And it'll make the screen not scroll so much, and it'll make 2 columns instead of just up and down rows. And I've learned this just by months and reading and searching and figuring out how stuff works. So I'm going to run the command again. Notice I typed clear just like you did in operating systems class Linux. If you took that, clear will clear the screen. I hit my up arrow key. Like Cisco or Linux, it brings back old commands that you've typed. So I don't have to retype net firewall rule. I can hit the up arrow key to bring it back. I mean, I could tap and complete it, but up arrow was faster. I'm gonna hit space. I'm gonna use a pipe. I'm gonna filter this. You remember you pipe stuff to grep in Linux, so you can search for things, or you pipe stuff to word count or different stuff. You may not remember that. That was a semester ago, but you did if you took that class. Hopefully you did anyway. So we're going to take the output of get net firewall rule, and we're going to feed it into another command. And this is like a DOS command. It's kind of an alias. It's not a commandlet. It's called, well, it sort of is a command, select. It's really select object, but you don't have to put dash object. You can abbreviate it. And we're going to select display name, comma, enabled. And that way it's only going to select those 2 pieces of information to put to our screen. And Microsoft's going to say, oh, I can display those in columnar. So it's going to put the display name and whether it's enabled, true or false out beside it. Go ahead and hit enter and see if that works. I think you'll like the output a lot better than what you had before. That's a lot easier to look at. It's condensed, you can scroll up and down, you can quickly tell if it's enabled or not. So you're able to plug in. We'll close that server manager up. No, it should be your virtual machine should be whatever you left off. You'll have to start it up again. Power button. That's definitely where you have to run. Just grab that phone. A lot of stuff is false. This Windows management instrumentation down here at the bottom, there's a lot of management stuff you can do, and it's false. The Windows Firewall remote management system, so if we use the graphical tool, we couldn't connect with the graphical tool to see these firewall rules right now. That's also another reason I went through the PowerShell, because I knew this was automatically turned off. As we scroll up, you'll see other remote management services are false. Almost anything that starts with the word remote is something that computer management would use. Remote event log is turned off. Remote volume management is turned off. We enabled remote desktop in our sconfig. So it's true because we enabled it. So that was something sconfig fixed for us. But there's some other remote stuff up here. Pretty much all the stuff that says remote is turned to false, and those are things that the computer management tools connect to see what's going on. Now we got to figure out how to enable those. And there's not a graphical little thing you can double click and turn them to true or not. See where the D drive is? That must be letter B. Right click your chart, you need to go to disk management. And it should let you edit and change that D drive to a V. You right click on it and change it to V. Okay, I'm going to enable the Windows management instrumentation first. I'm going to end up hitting my up arrow key a couple times just to where I get back to the get network firewall rule. I'm going to hit home on my keyboard to get there where the G is, and I'm going to change it to an S. You could have retyped it from scratch, but I'm going to set net firewall rule. And I told you that you'd probably be getting stuff and looking at what you needed to change. That's the get commands. Set commands make changes. So it's got an exact corresponding set command. And now I need to feed it information. I need to tell it what to set and what to set it to. So I want to set the display. I hit dash and I typed in DIS and hit tab until it said display group. So it auto completes the switches. This also should be kind of familiar when you played with Linux. They tried to make PowerShell friendly to Unix people. Were you able to change it to V?
Yeah.
You might need to restart after. Let me look, see what it looks like. Does it look like V under file 4 now? No, V is Victor. V? Yeah, that will work. So display group, I'm going to hit space. I'm going to, inside of quotation marks, because this is not part of a command or part of a switch. So any text that you feed into a command, typically have to surround it in quotation marks to let it know that it's getting text. So I'm going to put quotation marks. I'm going to type in Windows space management, or actually just MAN. And I'm going to put an asterisk because I don't want to type everything else out. I'm lazy. I want to turn all of the Windows management instrumentation on, and if I scroll up and down through here, I see Windows MAN and there's Windows Firewall. I'm looking to make sure I don't see another Windows MAN that's something different. So as I scroll, Windows Remote, but that's not Windows MAN. I don't see anything else that starts with Windows MAN, so that's why I just stopped right there and put a star. So do all of the Windows management instrumentations that you find. So it's going to see that and find these 4, and I'm going to put dash enabled or EN and hit tab. It should complete that command for me. So dash enabled. And then I'm going to just put space true. I have to spell it correctly. I didn't surround true with quotes because true is an actual kind of a Boolean command. I may need to have $ true. I think just true by itself will feed into that okay, not cause an issue. Sometimes it has to be a $ in front of it to be registered, but I think that'll work. If not, it'll let us know for sure. We'll have some red errors on our screen, something. I hit enter. I just got my command prompt back. That's probably a good sign. Normally, if you have problems, it'll tell you. If it worked correctly, sometimes you don't get any info feedback at all. You just get a prompt back. Probably a great thing. So how'd you figure out it worked? Hit the up arrow key a couple times and get the info again. So that says true. Sweet. It turned it on. So that just takes, you've had to do that in a production system on lots of different computers, and you finally got it memorized in your head to really get that down. Carrying around notes and stuff. But I'm going to clear my screen again so you can see stuff better. I'm going to hit the up arrow key until I get back to the set net firewall rule, display group, enable true. And I pointed out a bunch of them that started with the word remote. I said all of those pretty much need to be turned on so you can access. I'm going to backspace this, and I'm going to type in remote, and I'm going to add something else to it, which I probably should have added to the other one. I'm going to add a new switch. Doesn't really matter where I add it at, as long as it's after the set net firewall rule and it's not like in the middle of, so that right there is a switch. As long as it's not in the middle of that or in the middle of that, I could put it right in the middle of the two of them, but not, I couldn't put it between enabled and true or between display group and remote. So I put a dash profile domain. Why did I do that? Because you have a domain profile for, it reads the subnet that Contoso.com is running on and all the IP address subnets. Then you have private network, then you have global. Depending on what cable you're connected into, Windows will be putting your network adapter in one of those name fields. So when I put dash domain, it's going to limit the subnets that have access to those ports. I don't want somebody at McDonald's to be able to remote in because I opened it up to the public. Hopefully I got an external firewall at my router too, helping to block stuff, but just for security, I'm limiting just to domain subnets will be allowed this to be opened. I'll hit enter. I can get the rules again. I can see the remote's true. I don't get a lot of feedback here to know that it's false for public and private networks, but that opened that part up. It said I needed something called COM Plus. That might be some of this. I'm going to try. Now there's something else needs to be turned on before I want to try. No, it is event log. That's part of the remote. I'm going to try Server Manager again and do the computer management and see if it will pop up. Popped up without an error. I still think there's a couple of snap-ins in here that's being blocked by the firewall. I don't know that you can enable one of these two. Yeah, device manager, disk management. There's some other stuff has to be open. Event viewer appears. That works. Local users and groups work. So some of the snap-ins, there's still some firewalls blocking their access. We'd have to do some Google research, figure out what you had to enable for them to be accessible. So cool. You ran PowerShell script. Well, you didn't really write a script. You run some PowerShell commands. You've not done any script writing. You save that in a file, normally run it daily or something for some type of automated process to do. But you use PowerShell. So it might have seemed a little bit kind of like Linux and Cisco smashed together, command prompt, possibly. Probably maybe how you felt like it looked like. Other cool things you can look at. You want to see what roles and features are installed onto this system. You can also, of course, I could just use the server manager and add roles and features. That's a part of it. So I could see it graphically. But we could also do this through PowerShell. So just learning that you can do that might help you out if some administrator goes, hey, we need to turn this, I don't know, turn some feature off or turn some feature on 6,000 computers. You wouldn't want to connect to 6,000 different machines with a wizard and go through each one. You'd want to write a PowerShell script that says, hey, look at all the computer names. For every computer, go through and turn that feature off, and you click play and come back about 30 minutes later and just connected to 6,000 machines and done the work. So we'll look at how we can do scripts like that, but for now we're still just doing local right at the command line. So let's get Windows, and I'm just going to start tabbing because I can't quite remember what the name of it is, but I think it starts with Windows. Get Windows feature. Windows 10, I think it's get Windows optional feature. It's different from Windows 10 to Windows Server. So I'm going to get Windows feature and hit enter. And I don't have to do any type of selects or anything. It actually displays it to the screen in quasi graphical form. It shows the X's where the features that are installed, and it shows blanks where there's no feature installed. It gives the common human readable name, and then it gives the actual command name that feature would be known for. So you scroll up, it lists all the features and roles. The top part of it's roles, the last half is features, and where does one start and the other not? It's kind of hard to tell. So I could scroll up and down and find some type of role or feature that need to be enabled. And I could, instead of set, I would probably enable Windows feature and type one of these things out, and it would enable that feature. Let's try one. Let's enable the file server. So it's the name of it is fs-file server. So I'm going to try to enable that from this prompt. Go back up here and just. So what I'm looking at here, this line, I had to scroll up quite a bit, but I see file server doesn't have any X in it. So can I enable that from the prompt? Don't shake your head, no. So I can enable that from here. Let's enable Windows optional feature dash feature name fs-file server. I think that's what it was. And I'll hit enter. Let me find it again. Web file. Yeah, FS file server. So to enable is install. Install Windows feature name FS file server. One of the commands enables like utilities, and the other command adds in roles. So the optional feature is what you'd run on Windows 10 machines. And if you need to install a role service, it's going to serve stuff up to clients. It'd be install Windows feature. I believe that's the difference between the two commandlets. Is what type of component are they installing? But see, I almost forgot. I've done this quite a bit, and I almost forgot which one I'm supposed to use, because I've used the disable, or I don't know, remove Windows optional feature. There's a lot of like calendar and a lot of the apps and stuff that are in Windows 10 that I've never used and didn't want them on the system, and I couldn't remove them from the graphical tool. So I went to PowerShell and I could type their names and it removed them. I was like, yes, I got power. So install Windows feature name FS file server. I'm gonna go through and install it. Beautiful progress bar. SpaghettiOs. That's what I think. SpaghettiOs. They're gross, but oh well. So if I get Windows feature after that's installed, it did say success. Success is true. Hit enter. I'll scroll up. And I know it's up towards the top. Yeah, if I scroll up almost to the top, I see that there is now an X right there. Remember, we went in and added the Active Directory and DNS services and stuff to server 1 and 2. That's basically the same dialog box. I could do that. Like I said, I could do that graphically, add roles and features, And I'll show you as I click here, server 3 is highlighted.
And Mr. Goodman,
Yes.
I wasn't able to get either of those commands to work. I get the red errors.
Okay, I'll look at your screen in a second. So see right there, it says installed. Pretty cool. It's grayed out. I can't even remove it. That's interesting. But I'm gonna go ahead and cancel that. So I could have done it graphically. I could have went right there and clicked the checkbox for finish. But that's not what our businesses said. That, I mean, yes, you would do that. I would do that if I had one machine. I wouldn't go to command prompt and do it. I do know that those tools exist and I could write a script. We've had to do things like that, turn stuff on and off on lots of computers. So the enable optional feature, so we got install, it's not install optional feature, it's install Windows feature. So take the word optional out. That's what's. Yeah, it's name instead of feature name. So hit the up arrow key and no, it should work. Yep, it works.
Thank you.
So yes, how did I learn all of that? Just lots of Googling and reading Microsoft Docs and stuff and reading how to install feature. And it said, well, here's what Google, what's the PowerShell for installing features, or what's the PowerShell commandlet for installing roles, stuff like that. And reading your documentation and getting in and just playing until it works, getting lots of reds. That's real common when you're learning PowerShell. Lots of reds, and then you got to read it. Parameter cannot be found that matches the parameter feature name. So we see right there on the first line, it tells us that I don't understand what feature name is. So I'd have to go Google, like, something's wrong here. It's not taking it. I'd have to research, install Windows feature, and scan through the web page and see that there wasn't a feature name switch, but there was a dash name switch to make that correction. A lot of times the red will try to hint at what's wrong with it. Sometimes you Google the first line error and somebody else will ask the question and they'll try to say how to fix it. So we're going to write scripts later on. We'll import 100 users and all of their information, email address, phone number, address, all kinds of stuff. But we won't do that graphically. We'll write a script and import out all of that later on in the semester. We'll also build some other scripts to like do network testing and things like that, just for practice and in the class. Pretty nice. We've got 3 servers set up. Like I said, Monday's probably going to be most of the day probably for test out. Because next week, Friday, chapter 2, I'll have to look. Is it due next Friday? Chapter 2? I think it is. Anyway, you'll have Monday to start working on that. And it's time to log out. Of course, we don't have to be out of here until about 12:45. And hopefully you have a good weekend and a good lunch. you. Get any further? Well, everybody's a mistake, right? You learn more. Typically, if it doesn't go perfectly, you'll be better prepared in catching yourself in production environment.
So I found out how to get to this config using command prompt.
So that annoyed you? So
Yeah.
you could do it?
Yeah, if you use WinRS -r server name.
Yeah.
and cmd.exe. You can just
See, that's awesome. That sort of mentality is like, goodness says there's not a way to do it remotely very easily. I'm gonna figure it out. I bet there's,
yeah. See,
you're gonna be an IT person for sure.
well, I'm programming class right now.
Yeah,
When I was in the Air Force, I was networking stuff.
yeah. So either way, coding and program, they kind of go, the jobs kind of mesh together.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of that.
Security, cybersecurity is really meshed together where we need to do a lot of coding to do stuff.